It's time for Mio on MMA recap of UFC 279, which was originally supposed to be Nate Diaz versus Khamzat Chimaev. It became Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. Chimaev missed weight by a horrendous amount. Fought Kevin Holland. Leach fought Daniel Rodriguez, and we got to recollection the first major series knockout I've ever seen via upkick to the liver. I could be mistaken on that. And we got a little special guest today. We got my man, Byron, aka Gigantus, aka Byron Giant, formerly of YouTube fame, and a guy who does commentary with me on sim races that you can check out on the ESR Racing channel. So, Byron, thanks for being here.
I'm taking over. This is my podcast now.
Byron's been a fan of MMA for longer than me, I do believe. I don't think we've ever
Since the beginning.
I don't think we've ever ascertained who's been a fan longer, but he is older than me, so we assume he's been a fan longer.
I watched the first couple of UFCs not too long after they happened on VHS. That's how long I've been a fan.
Well, there you go. He's been through the Pride years, the Strike Force years, the Elite XC years, the Affliction years, and now into the UFC's global domination years.
Yep.
And yeah, we're going to talk about the fights. We're going to talk about the lead up. We're going to talk about the aftermath. And well, let's talk about the lead up here really first up. This card sucked. We'll just throw that out there right now. And that's not on the fighters. I mean, the three top fights on this card changed opponents less than 24 hours before taking to the octagon. So
that might have been the most entertaining part of the whole shenanigans.
Yeah. And there's some talk about whether the fighters got more money or not. The UFC, by the way, is claiming that no, they did not get more money. And there are two theories on this. Number one is that Dana White can't let the fighters get anything over on him. Can't even let the appearance of them getting anything over on him. And the other thought is that this will probably continue to feel backdoor bonuses. Conspiracy theories is basically because he's like, we paid them their contracted amount, and then everyone's like, but they really get paid massive amounts behind closed doors, which is stupid because with this being more a corporation, more a proper business now than ever before, with the IPO, the independent, the offering, the fact that there are shareholders now, the UFC wants credit for every expense possible, and wants that level, and it's just incredibly unlikely that they're paying the fighters behind closed doors because they have to divvy out those profits, so they just be taking money out of their own pockets.
Yeah, and then they're creating a massive corruption's the wrong word, but I mean embezzling. It's almost like embezzling. Probably fraud.
It wouldn't fit embezzling. Probably wouldn't even really be considered fraud, but it would doubt. It would cast doubt on the legitimacy and the reliability of the financial statements of the company, which when you actually have shareholders relying on those statements is actually a pretty big deal in how many companies, well, essentially sink themselves.
Well, they got to pay taxes on that unless these are super undisclosed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if they've got this massive slush fund where they can just divvy out extra money to fighters, there has to be some sort of something somewhere. And if the government finds out you got a bunch of extra money, where did this come from, sir?
Also, the fact that they're in court for two separate antitrust lawsuits right now, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to.
Mm-hmm.
This is the other thing: is it doesn't make any sense to understate fighter pay because it makes you look bad. Because then you get the whole anti-negative attention of fighter pay and the debate going on there. So, anyways, enough with the financial side of things. Essentially, this was a bad card to start with. That probably on paper became more interesting with the reshuffling of the card, and I was guilty of being someone who's like, hey, this looks kind of better, which I probably shouldn't have, because the realistic idea that anyone the Leech versus D-Rod fight was a great example of what happens when you put people on super short notice like this. They both fought with very basic skill sets.
Yeah,
Like
it became kind of a sparring match.
Rodriguez did very little more than like just jab, 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 and I mean got the win, despite the fact that I scored it for the Leech, but got the win. And the Leech himself was also very, very basic. Not a lot going on, and that probably has to do with the fact that they're not prepared for the opponent. They Rodriguez prepared for Kevin Holland, who's very, very different from the Leech, and the Leech prepared for Tony Ferguson, who is a unique special snowflake. We'll talk more about him probably right now. So let's get to the main event: Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. The underdog Nate Diaz winning here by guillotine in the fourth round. I had him up 3 rounds to none. At that point, a lot of people had him up 2 rounds to one. It's possible the first 3 rounds were close enough that one of them could have gone to Ferguson without any real difficulty. But to me, this fight was a condemnation of the career of Tony Ferguson because up until now he's been losing to nothing but like the best lightweights in the world: Michael Chandler, Beneil Dariush, Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje. It is quite possible that those are literally the four best in the world. Although I would probably put Poirier in there instead of Chandler, um, and possibly Makachev. And this was kind of the proof that like he probably has a game that doesn't function against anybody anymore, because
Yep.
he went out there and he did Tony things. They just weren't impressive. They weren't effective, and his physical skills are breaking down to the point where I don't know about anyone else. Maybe there's like big Tony fans who are still hopeful that he's going to keep coming for something, but I think he's done. And then after the fight, hearing him go, "I'm back. This is not a loss. This is a losing experience, or this is a learning experience." I'm just like, no, no, this is a loss. This is a loss. And for Nate Diaz, he looked like Nate Diaz, but old, because he
Hmm.
was still doing like Tony. He was still doing Nate things, and but getting tired, and particularly in the third round, like he did a lap around the cage to shake off. Uh, I'm sure he's gonna say, "No, I'm just me mug. I'm just out there being real," but like probably because he took a really good leg kick and had to walk it off. um,
Yep.
and yeah, Byron, do you have anything to add to this? Because I think you were even more negative on this fight than I am.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the idiot got finished with a one-armed guillotine. Like it wasn't even or one. Yeah, it was a one-armed guillotine choke. It wasn't even close. Like I know that he's got a black belt from Eddie Bravo, but I would yeah, it's indicative of Tony Ferguson's entire career. You're right because he, as I was saying yesterday, he doesn't train. He does train, but he doesn't train. He's uncoachable by virtue of the fact that he doesn't do fight camps. He doesn't do sparring.
Well, I will have to say he did do a fight camp this time at Jackson Wink, but also at the
Yeah,
same time you heard his corner yelling, "Don't turn your back! Don't turn your back! Don't do spinny shit!" And it's like that's Tony Ferguson's game.
yeah,
So like goes to a camp and immediately gets told like stop doing everything that you've been doing.
yeah. But I mean, since he has had no real training, really, like he did early on. I don't know where he used to train, but I know he used to obviously go. He had to go somewhere to learn how to do some of this stuff. But I guarantee you that he got his black belt in jujitsu is like, well, that was, I guess, something, and probably has not trained jujitsu since then. He might have done some seminars, got paid to do that, might have done some exhibition stuff. But I can almost guarantee you he just views that like, well, I'm a black belt now. And I'll just go do weird, quirky movement exercises, and that'll be good enough. And then you got one arm guillotine choked. He looked completely lost on the feet during the striking because I don't know if anybody's ever taught him like real fundamental striking before. He was just unusual, unorthodox,
And
and had a decent amount of power.
he was incredibly physical too. Like he was in his
Yeah,
prime, he was super fast, super explosive.
yeah, and that was good enough. And now the speed's gone. His body's taken a toll, and he doesn't have any fundamentals to go back on. Everybody's seen what he's capable of and what he can do, and what he can do now is not what he could have done 2, 3 years ago. So, yeah, he's done. I don't see what learning experience he could have had other than maybe now he's had a fight camp. What he's had a decent fight camp and lost again, and it's like, well, I guess that didn't work either, and we'll never have another fight camp again, and we'll just go back to doing random shit.
Yeah. The only about the only thing I'll give him as a caveat, a cutout, an excuse, as it were, he got finished in the fourth round of a fight that he wasn't planning to have 4 rounds of, because his original fight with the Leech was supposed to be a 3 rounder. This turned into a 5 rounder. So that's about the only quote positive excuse, reason, rationale. Essentially, what I'm saying is he may have just gassed out.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't he supposed to be this super athlete, this
Yeah.
guy who is, unconquerable, is this superdy duperdy unusual, unorthodox? He sleeps in a tent on the top of the Nepalese mountains during the day, and then he comes down at night and does all this training, or whatever the fuck the mythos is this week. And it just he doesn't have the physical capabilities anymore. He's taken a huge step over a cliff. And since he did not ever do real training, I don't think there's nothing to fall back on. There's no
It's
1-2, there's no jab, there's no head movement at all.
it's the classic problem of anyone whose fighting style is based on incredible athleticism or physical capability is if it allows you to cheat for the longest time, and once it's gone, you can't cheat anymore.
Yeah,
And
see Rashad Evans.
uh yeah, Rashad Evans is a decent example. There are a ton. There we could list all night long pretty much all the different fighters who have come through with amazing physicality. Melvin Gillard is a great example of like a guy who,
Oh yeah.
once the power and once the chin went away, it's like you're just incredibly easy to hit.
Yep.
Um, I was a little disappointed in Nate's post fight, for a couple of reasons. Number one, like the whole I'm gonna go show you how to run another sport, and then I'm gonna come back and win. It's complete pipe dreams. Like Nate's future is probably a boxing match against Jake Paul where he gets paid a bunch of money,
Could take
and
a dive.
uh I don't think Paul would pay for taking job. I think Jake Paul has a remarkable understanding that like it doesn't matter if he loses. like
Yeah.
the circus is the circus, and and he's gonna fight Anderson Silva, and then I would say Nate Diaz is an ideal opponent for him. He's smaller than him. He's a guy who doesn't hit particularly hard, particularly if you're gonna have the heavy gloves on, and is physically shot. Like we just talked about how shot Tony Ferguson is. Nate is perhaps even more shot. It's just Nate has some fundamentals to him. He has a a very good jiu-jitsu game. He does have some good fundamental boxing. Um I think the key is that Nate is at the opposite end of the spectrum in the sense that in terms of physicality, all he ever really had was cardio.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant that in order to win fights, he actually had to, well, become a reasonable fighter, at least to get to the level of like fighting for a UFC title. And so, yeah, hopefully Tony retires. Doesn't look like he will. Hopefully Nate does some boxing. He gets paid. And I wish he had burned the UFC a little bit more at the end there. But I guess he's hoping to come back in his own head. But
Yeah.
that's dumb. I don't have much to say about Khamzat Chimaev versus Kevin Holland. I assume you don't really either.
I mean, there's the only obvious thing about it is that Big Mouth talked himself into a fight that there was zero chance of him winning. And
I will say
your boy
I've
Camshaft Chili Dog or Camshaft Chimichunga is like a national champion wrestler. Kevin Holland cannot wrestle at all. He got raffle stomped, ragdolled, and then choked out and sent home. That's what's
yep.
going to happen to him every time for the next 3 years, unless he goes on a crash course of wrestling. Just stop doing anything else. Learn to go wrestle. Go to GSP and go. Please, master. Please teach me.
Yeah, I don't really I've never understood the Kevin Holland development as a fighter. Guy with a BJJ background. He's actually not a bad grappler. Like, got tapped out here, but like Chimaev is top of the food chain. Like,
Yeah.
do not go to the ground with. Uh, it's just been weird that he's never really picked up any wrestling. And I've now that I've actually seen the footage of their beef at the pre-fight presser that got the presser canceled and led to this whole shuffling, it looked very tame. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting some like Conor McGregor Habib level stuff,
Yeah, like I heard, oh,
and
he
we didn't.
Sparta kicked
We
Kevin Holland
we
right in the face or the chest or
we
something.
uh we got we got nothing close to that.
No.
Nothing like we got a scrum. That was about it.
Yeah, like
So
Hamza he did throw a kick, but it was this weird little tappy thing,
yeah,
and it was nothing.
I mean, let's put it this way: George Masvidal giving Leon Edwards a 3-piece and a soda is
Oh yeah,
way more extreme than this.
yeah.
And it's led to a bunch of conspiracy theories. I'm not really going to talk about any of them because here's the thing: if any of the conspiracy theories are true, I don't understand why anyone would go through the effort. I don't understand the motive, I guess, for booking this card to be shitty, orchestrating a scrum to move things around, and I guess it could all just be a cover up for Chimaev missing weight, but like all the harm of Chimaev missing weight is still there. Like, dude weighed in 7.5 pounds overweight, and everyone still saw that. So I don't even know. I don't even know what they're hiding at that point, I
Yeah,
guess.
I have no idea.
Next opponents, Chimaev might end up getting a title shot still, but like if I'm the UFC, I'm not giving him it because it's like you like there are people who are like, well, you're okay with Charles Oliveira getting a title shot after he missed weight. Charles Oliveira missed weight by like a half pound, or maybe it was a full pound even. That's normal. That's that's not alarming. Missing by 7 pounds, that's alarming as shite. Like, so to give him a title shot, you'd have to have someone standing by just in case, kind of like they did with Chad Mendez against with Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor, and then Aldo got hurt and we got Mendez uh, for the title shot. Um, or I guess interim title shot, I suppose was what it was. So if I'm them, he's got beef on Twitter with Paulo Costa. Just book it. Just let those two super angry dudes go at it.
Hmm.
And I think there's a segment of the fan base that would just love it.
Anytime we get to see Paulo Costa go flat face down, it's hilarious.
And I have no idea why Kevin Holland versus Michelle Pajea hasn't happened already.
That's also true.
The Leech versus Daniel Rodriguez. I scored the first 2 rounds for the Leech. I scored the third round for Rodriguez. Rodriguez did apparently, according to UFC stats, outland the Leech in round number 2. So maybe you give that round to him. It's a weird one because none of the 3 rounds were scored the same on the cards. Like, it, like it's all over the place. Like it's like 2-1, 2-1, and it's like different judges on different combinations. It's a really weird scorecard. Um, and I can get it because the first round essentially is the Leech landing more, but largely to the body and the legs. And we know the body and leg strikes don't get scored nearly as heavily, and also are harder to judge because if you punch someone in the face, it doesn't really matter the angle you see it from. You can kind of gauge the cleanliness of it. Whereas with body kicks, leg kicks, and so on, depending on the angle you have, they don't necessarily look impressive. So the lack of head work from the Leech makes that a weird round to score, even though I think it really has to go to him. And then in the second round, Rodriguez landed more, but the Leech hurt him and was the only person to score any kind of, not a knockdown, but there was a crazy uh, exchange kind of halfway through the round. The only time it really got heated up, basically, where the Leech landed an excellent counter left hand and then clubbed Rodriguez with a big hook that stumbled him. Definitely had him hurt. Definitely had him seeing stars a little bit. He didn't fall down. He wasn't what I would say rocked, but like that was the most extensive damage of the fight. So I gave the leech that round too. And then the third round was just kind of Rodriguez's jab versus some counter attempts by the leech. And like I said, I scored it for the leech. I don't, I'm not angry that it went to Rodriguez, honestly. It was a fight where both guys fought with like really, really pared down games. And I have no doubt that if you book these two guys to have a fight with a proper training camp for each other, it would be way better. Do you have anything you want to add to about this fight?
Not really. If you're gonna rebook this fight, I'm on a kind of instantly of two minds. Uh, I would hope that both of these guys could do much better with a full training camp, and simultaneously, if it ends up being what I saw again, I don't want to see it again. That was, neither guy was ready. Neither one of them knew what to do. They just sort of had a sparring match. I thought the leech won the fight, but apparently you don't get paid to be right and a judge at the same time.
So here were the judges' scorecards. Judge Mike Bell gave the leech the first round, gave Rodriguez 2 and 3. Douglas Crosby gave Rodriguez 1 and 2, and gave the leech the third round. That's a bad card. I was gonna say that there's like
Yeah,
no
that's
bad
terrible.
card possible, but it's like if the leech won, if Rodriguez lost a round, I guess in a nutshell, or won a round, it was the third round.
Yeah.
So it's not that giving the leech the third round is a bad card, but if you gave the leech the third round, it's 30-27. Like
Hmm.
straight up. And Ron McCarthy gave Rodriguez. Another one. Ron McCarthy gave Rodriguez the first round and gave Leach the second and the third. So
Yeah, that's wrong.
here I was like kind of defending the judges, going like, okay, these are all three really close rounds. You could go a lot of different ways with this, but Ron McCarthy and Douglas Crosby, I take it back. I take it back. Your combinations don't make any sense.
Damn you,
Um,
regular sized Ron McCarthy.
Mike Bell, who I disagree with because he scored it for Rodriguez, but I totally follow his logic. I mean, I'm entirely okay with that. He essentially gave the second round to Rodriguez on volume as opposed to the stumble. So I'm okay with that. Like I disagree, but Mike Bell's got a perfectly respectable card there. But Douglas Crosby and Ron McCarthy, I'm not really a fan. Not of who you gave the win to necessarily, because like McCarthy is the judge who scored it for the leech, but which rounds went to whom don't really make any sense.
Yeah.
And for next opponents, I did talk about possibly you do the rematch, but I don't like to advocate for a rematch unless there's some controversy. So I said Rodriguez versus Jeff Neal, battle of two dudes who have a really nice combination boxing game and not a lot else.
What
So
if
let them
Daniel
fight.
Rodriguez versus Douglas Crosby?
Oh, and the Leech versus Jake Matthews, because Jake Matthews has kind of refound himself and is doing really well actually right now. And as a result, why not? Be a nice step up in competition. It's not too far down for the Leech. It's a chance for the Leech to rebuild. The Leech did get screwed over with this whole thing because I mean, like
Oh yeah.
dude was prepping for Tony Ferguson and got Daniel Rodriguez on like 24 hours notice, which is a tremendously different fight. Um, he was the most screwed over here. Well, I don't know. Is Kevin Holland the most screwed over guy here? Because
No, he talked
he was
himself into that shit.
he was prepping for Rodriguez against Shemaev.
No, he talked himself into the fight against Chimaev, and then stated that he would not fight Chimaev unless it was a 5-round fight. He talked himself all the way into that.
I mean, in fairness, is there extra pay for the 5 rounds? Because you might as
Yeah,
well.
I
You might
think
as
there
well.
is. I think there is.
Might as well.
I think that's how they got around they got paid their contractual money, but they got paid the 5-round contractual money, I think is how that went.
Irene Aldana versus Macy Chiasson. This was actually pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Messy, but like a fun messy. We got a lot of 50-50 exchanges on the feet, and then We go to the ground. Chiasson gets caught in an armbar. There's a mount. There's a go plata attempt. There's more armbar attempt. She probably tapped in the round, but the referee missed it. And then in the second round, and I was saying to Javier, and by extension to you, but Javier had asked the question. We were watching. He's like, "What does Macy do after that?" Because like it didn't really feel like the striking was really going her way. Like it was close, it was competitive, but it felt like it felt like that round really was like, oh, how do you come back from that? And then Macy comes out aggressively striking, gets a takedown, and ends up actually like schooling Aldana on the ground. And it's like this is the greatest comeback of grappling I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't even like one of those comebacks where like someone gets caught with an overhand right or something, and they end up with like a huge comeback in that regard, like they hurt somebody. No, this was just like, all right, you own me on the ground. We're gonna go right back there. I'm gonna take your back and land a bunch of elbows. And yeah, really interesting sequence with Aldana going for a leg lock and Chiasson getting the back off of that. That was sweet. And then in the third round, Chiasson's kind of doing her thing and then dumps Aldana to the ground. Aldana's just like swinging away with her legs like a kid being tickled and kicks her in the liver and wins. And
Yeah, axe kick right on the fucking liver. Ding.
it was the weirdest finish I think we've seen in the UFC of all time. Even Aldana looked greatly confused by what had happened.
No. They train that all the time.
They train that all the time.
So
No,
she said in her post-fight interview,
her,
like, no, of course, we train that. We train all the time. We train.
her reaction says completely different. I'm just saying, because she looked stunned. She looked confused when the referee said, "No, fight's over." It was like she was she was getting ready to protest. She didn't kick her in the groin. Like that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Um, anything you want to add,
No,
or
like
if
it
we
totally did
kind of
look like a
covered it?
groin strike. Like right off the hop. It happened so fast that and it made a loud impact. Very loud.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh no. Oh, wait, maybe. And it turned as soon as the ref went in and you could hear the mic pick it up. He's like, "Are you okay? Where'd you get hit?" She's like, "In the liver." He's like, "Okay, fight's over."
That was it was an interesting fight. That was probably fight of the night. They didn't give a fight of the night bonus.
They did not.
Either that or the Barnett versus Collier fight should have got it. Although of course Barnett missing weight means he was ineligible
Yeah.
for the bonus. So
They did give
this fight.
Aldana a performance bonus though.
See, I don't even think she should have got the performance bonus because I don't think it was actually that good of a performance.
No, you're not wrong, but
It's kind of like Nate Diaz got a performance bonus too, and I'm like, man, just beat up a corpse. Like I don't know,
uh-huh.
like it was like if it was like the old school knockout of the night bonuses because this is something you've never seen before. Like sure, but performance wise, Aldana fought a really good first round and then kind of got her ass kicked after that point,
Mm-hmm.
and won. So there you go. Uh, for Aldana next, I think her Twitter account, and I don't think it's run by her because I think most fighters don't run their Twitter accounts. I remember the best example of this from recent memory was when I was actually arguing with Eileen Perez's Twitter account as she was like prepping for her fight with Stephanie Egger, and it's like, yeah, no, this is definitely some intern running this account right now. Like, there's no way the fighter is taking time before the fight to talk on Twitter. Like, there's no way. Um, but they called for a title shot. We're kind of in the point where like might as well, but at the same time, Nunez is talking about putting in a 145 defense, and we're going to talk about that later. But that gave me the idea of Aldana versus Juliana Pena in basically, essentially, a number one contenders match for the 135 belt. And for Macy Chiasson, I still don't know what to make of her. She's got a lot of physical talent. Like she's very, very strong. She has confusing grappling because she seems terrible at times and good at other times. And this fight was a perfect example of that. I've got penciled in here she could fight the winner of Chelsea Chandler and Julia Storyarenko because might be fun. But like I don't really know what to make of her as a fighter. I never have. She's super tall, really strong, but she just seems to crumble at odd, awkward times. Like things that, and to be clear, like a liver kick sucks. And I've never had an axe kick to the liver, but this was just a weird finish, and it's kind of on the list of like Macy Chiasson's weird moments, and I don't really
Hmm.
know what to do with her as a fighter. Byron, do you want to talk about Johnny Walker versus Ion Kudalaba? Because
Uh,
this
no,
seems like a very you fight.
that is horrible. I didn't like it. It was trash. Throw it out.
I thought it was a pretty good performance actually from Johnny Walker. To be fair,
Yeah,
uh,
I mean, it was fine. I didn't really. It kind of actually doesn't stand out in my mind for any reason.
okay,
The only thing about this fight that I thought was really interesting is that they kicked after the fight. They kicked Johnny Walker and Kavanaugh out of the building. Like he's
they
still in his
did. Yeah,
shorts,
yeah,
no
in his shorts,
shoes,
no shoes, no
nothing,
shirt, going back to the hotel, and
and they
my
gave him a performance bonus.
all of this is from Kavanaugh, to be clear. So I
Yeah,
have no idea because I don't trust Kavanaugh. But like, apparently they said it was to keep like there from being drama backstage. But I don't even know what drama there could have been
from who?
backstage. Like, it's not like this fight had any controversy. Walker went out there, got taken down, did get warned for grabbing the cage a bunch of times, but he reversed Kudalaba, slammed him, took his back, rear naked choke attempt, a lot of random Walker chants from the crowd. I said here they probably think he's American,
But he's
DC had a
fighting out of
theory.
Ireland, therefore he must be
Yeah,
virtually American, right?
DC's theory was that like because Kudalaba is from a similar area of the world, which by the way he's not as Chimaev. That this was kind of like residual hate for Chimaev,
Hmm.
rubbing off on like other people because I mean Chimaev is from Sweden, born in or I forget if he's born in Dagestan or Dagestani parents, but like Dagestani Swede, and
Yeah, he
Kudalaba
was born in
is from
Dagestan. He
Moldova.
spent like the first couple of years of his life there, and then they had to flee.
Mhm. And Kudalaba is from Moldova. These are not geographically close together, and so I think the I'm going to give the crowd a little bit of credit that was probably not it. So I have no idea why they were chanting for Johnny Walker beyond thinking maybe American.
His name's Walker, and he's from Ireland, so
Yeah,
therefore,
and then he got the tap out eventually.
which is sorry, anybody listening to this, his name isn't Walker. His first name's
Mhm.
Walker. He's from Brazil.
Yeah, he's Brazilian, but currently based out of SPG Ireland, Straight Blast Gym, Conor McGregor's crew, John Kavanagh and company. Please leave that gym, Johnny Walker, because
Yeah,
there's so much potential in you if you have a gym that can actually harness it. And SPG Ireland is not that.
his name is Walker Johnny da Silva Barasuza.
That's a
He's
cool name.
not from Ireland, my friend.
Anyways, for next, oh, and he did the worm, but then like kind of messed up his leg and then stopped doing the worm, and that was so he's learned
It
nothing about injuring himself during post fight celebrations.
was pretty funny because
Uh,
Javier was like, "Oh, what's the over under that he does the worm and injures himself again?" But like before the card even started.
for next opponents, I got Johnny Walker against Anthony Smith. It's just it depends. I've not heard how long Anthony Smith is going to be out for with his leg injury, but
Oh, I
that
hadn't
seems
heard
like
that
it'd be
he.
fun. He hurt it in the ankle eye fight that he
Oh
missed,
right, God, how did that slip my brain?
and I will not die happy until I see Ion Kudalaba versus Jimmy Crute in a battle of the two most angry 205ers on the planet.
Indeed.
And then to the undercard we go. Feature main prelim was Hakeem Dawodu versus Julian Erosa. Julian Erosa just proved me like horrendously wrong here because I thought that Dawodu's crisp, clean striking would be too much for him, that he would be hard to kick, that he would be hard to pressure. And Erosa just kind of did his thing. And I thought he won all three rounds.
Hmm.
He went there, he pressured him, he turned the pace up, he hurt Dawodu, and Dawoodu did show the trademark problem he has, which is dude doesn't have that extra gear. He just doesn't. Like his coaches were even like, "You're down 2-0. You got to do something in the third round," and he didn't.
Correct. Didn't make weight, didn't show up to fight, didn't win.
Yep, was pretty damn sad. For Julian Erosa, I have Dan Ige as the next opponent, and for Dawoodu, Charles Jourdan, because until I see him turn it up to the next gear and keep up with somebody violent, I don't know if I can really pick him going forward because he's won a bunch of split decisions. He had not lost a lot, which was the key, but he'd been in like a lot of close fights that didn't feel like they should have actually been that close. And Charles Jourdan will be like, "So I hear you don't like violence. Allow me to bring this to you. Step into my office." And yeah, we're gonna go with exposure therapy for this one. Jailton Almeida versus Anton Turkali. Byron, you want to take us through this one because it was short and sweet.
Well, this one man showed up and he had the cornrows in and he was looking for the ladies. And then another man showed up and was like, nah. And then the fight was over.
Pretty much, pretty much. I mean, I like Turkali's whole like nickname background. I'm like, I came for the ladies and realized I had to learn to fight to keep their boyfriends away,
Yeah,
and now that's how we're here. But yeah, Almeida just did his standard thing, which is throw a kick to the body, like up high on like the chest area or the head, get you off balance with it, shoot in for a takedown, take you down, mount you, throw some ground and pound. You give up your back. I have the rear naked choke, and we're done.
pretty much. I mean, he
Um,
did come into this fight. The was it the pleasure man. I call him Lover Boy. I don't know why, but his nickname is the Pleasure
the
Man.
Pleasure Man,
And
which
he
is
did
up
come
there
in
on the
8 and
all-time
0.
great ones.
He did come in here 8 and 0, and is now 8 and 1. But he's never really beat anybody, so that's been
Yeah,
interesting.
he's not really fought anybody particularly interesting. I'm still not like I'm not off the bandwagon, so to speak. I mean, I wasn't really like on the bandwagon, but like Almeida's good, so this doesn't necessarily mean that he's
Hmm.
terrible. He took this fight on short notice. Almeida is really good, so like whatever. I'm still moderately interested to see what he can do going forward. 205 needs good blood, needs new prospects. So let's roll with it. And to that end, I said give him Devin Clark because Devin Clark will try to do some similar things to what Almeida did here, but isn't nearly as fluid at it and is probably more of a representation of like 205. So let it happen. And Almeida still wants to fight at heavyweight still. And to that end, I saw some people suggesting Sergey Spivak. I have Marcin Tybura here because if he's actually going to be a competitor at heavyweight, and he might be, he's really athletic. Um, put him in there with the Sharks and see if he swims or if he gets eaten alive.
Have him fight John Jones. Both debuting 205ers at heavyweight.
Jamie Pickett versus Dennis Tialunin. Tialunin is still confusing to me why he's even in the UFC, although he showed well here, and Pickett still is incredibly nervous and looks incredibly uncomfortable every second of the fight, and I don't know why he's fighting. I don't get it. Is this like exposure therapy? Like I was saying with Dawoodu for like you're gonna face your fears, and I have this to say: if this is indeed a therapist's idea of that, it doesn't need to happen. I feel like humans having a fear of violence is probably not necessarily a bad thing.
This is
Uh,
true.
um, there's not much to say here other than like we saw the rare point deduction for a ball shot because Tia Lunin kicked him in the kicked Pickett in the nuts in the first round, and you could clearly hear the cup, but the commentary team is like, "Oh no, that was on the waistline, that was on the belly, that wasn't a cup shot." Like my guys, you can hear the cup, like it definitely hit him low.
My brother's in genitalia. His ankle bone skipped off the crest of the cup. It hit him in the balls.
Yeah, and Tia Lunin did it again, basically. Now I did find it weird that he got the point deducted because let me try and paint the picture here with my words. Pickett was coming forward to throw a punch, leg up, balls kind of exposed, if you know what I mean. And Tia Lunen's throwing a kick, and it hits him basically in the taint.
Yep.
Um, Definitely a groin shot. Definitely a take your 5 minutes, whatever. Like take your time, take your recovery. It's a foul, but for the number of like intentional scrabs and eye pokes that we see, getting a point deducted for what was kind of really just a weird situation, kicking the balls, was a bit weird, and didn't really matter because Tia Lunin was like, "I'm gonna end this, man," and he did.
Correct.
Um, Tia Lunin does throw really hard. I want to make that quite clear. Like he's got good power. He's got like kind of that action fighter discount Alexander Shlemenko vibe to him. But I still don't have really any thoughts that he's going to be good in the UFC. And Pickett is also not good in the UFC. So I don't think this really means much. For Tia Lunin, I came up with the idea of like him and Dusko Todorovic will have a good fight. And for Pickett, I don't think he gets cut because I think this is his first loss. Let me make sure. Let me make sure of that. What was his last fight? Okay, it's 2 losses in a row. He lost to Darce Choke to Kyle Daukus, and before that he had beaten Joseph Holmes, Leonardo Staropoli, and lost to Jordan Wright and Teflon Nchukwu. So it's 2-4. Maybe he could get cut off that, but probably not. And to that end, I have him against the loser of Josh Fremd, who is truly missing the mark with the nicknames because Josh best friend. Come on, do it. And Trayshawn Gore, who is a super athletic but super raw and super shallow technical fighter. That I don't know. That could be an interesting fight. Then we had probably the fight of the night, but ineligible for bonuses. Chris Barnett, Jake Collier. Jake Collier went out there and dropped him early and was really, really looking good. Like he messed up Huggy Bear's eye. There was like this weird droop going on with the lip of Barnett, which led to speculation that his jaw was broken. But apparently not, because he's talking fine afterwards and partying and drinking. And there's also the slight suggestion that he had a stroke in the cage. So,
It did kind of look like that.
yeah, I hope it was nothing. I hope it was nothing. We'll just leave it at that. But the doctor didn't call the fight between rounds, not rings. And they come out and they start just rock'em sock'em roboting it. Collier goes for a takedown. Barnett ends up on top and pounds him out. And I do love Chris Barnett. I love his celebrations every time he wins with the big butt drop. I'll be happy to watch him win every time it happens. But at the same time, at 5'9" at heavyweight, I probably won't ever pick him to actually win a fight.
You're definitely going to get sucker kicked in the face standing.
For next opponents, I have Barnett versus Dontel Mays because it makes me laugh. Super tall black dude, athletic, looking like an Adonis versus Barnett. Just picture that. Let it sink in. Let it marinate. And for Jake Collier, assuming he's not going to get with a dietitian and lose weight, because far be it for me to tell somebody they got to lose weight, because I myself am pretty pudgy. But there is a point where like we know Collier could be at a way more healthy weight because this is a guy who fought at 185 and 205 in his career. It's like Joe Riggs being at heavyweight. It's not healthy. And this is a non-fight thing. This is just like live your best life. And if he's gonna fight at heavyweight, I got the loser Parker Porter and Hamdi Adel Wahad, which is probably going to be Parker Porter as the next opponent. Norma Dumont versus Dan Wolf. I'm disappointed in Wolf, not because she lost, not because she got out grappled, not because she got out struck. I'm just kind of disappointed that like apparently she has no idea how to find range. because it's not like Dumas is a defensive maestro. Like Dumas is a terrible defensive fighter. Like she comes in, throws the 1-2, and then literally mugs at you. Just punch her. And Wolf couldn't even really do that. And like it's kind of weird that you got this 3-time amateur boxing US national champion. And like ironically, the least impressive part of her game for a 1-0 fighter is the boxing. Like there's good form, there's good speed, but like you can't find the target. That's kind of horrible.
Yep.
And Dumas won a decision. Not much more to say. Dumas probably gets that title shot I was alluded to before because who else is even in this division to get a title shot? And for Danielle Wolf, I have no idea what's next because I have no idea why they signed her. She was a 37-year-old making her UFC MMA debut on the Dana White Contender Series. Arguably lost the fight. They signed her, and it doesn't even look like they know what to do with her. So I don't know. This Daniel Wolf experiment is confusing to me, and I don't know why she just didn't go to PFL. Where yes, she would definitely lose to Kayla Harrison, but like there are lots of cans in the PFL 155 tournament. Just like beat them up, I guess. It seems way more profitable and uh pointful, I guess, for that path than what she's on. So I don't know. Do you have anything to add?
Not really. No, I didn't know who this chick was going into this fight, and I still don't know because apparently, like you said, she's supposed to be a good boxer, and she can't punch. So, fuck. What do you do?
I mean, she could punch, but she has no concept of range, which is weird because like you're 5'11". How did you not learn like some basic range finding jab tools? Like it's just weird. What I thought would actually be good about Wolf has been woefully disappointing, and I'll like credit where it's due. Like she seems actually again for somebody in her second pro fight actually pretty comfortable as a grappler and pretty comfortable with getting kicked. So I don't know. It's weird. I guess they focus so hard on trying to teach her MMA skills over at Alliance that her boxing is atrophied. And the problem there is that means that there's just nothing that actually wins fights.
Correct.
Chad and Helliger versus Hailey Alatang. They were really trying to bring forth this idea that Helliger is the second coming of Dan Henderson and has super knockout power. He doesn't. Alatang hits harder, hits faster, and honestly, Helliger is just kind of like this. Like I like him. I like him. He's put together an effective style, opportunistic, good scrappy guy. Adjusts, well schooled and everything. It's just he doesn't really have any physical upside to him, and that's basically why he lost.
It looks like he basically came out of storage, and he was so stiff that he couldn't effectively deliver what we in the business refer to as striking.
Yeah, Alatang hurt him a couple times. He was hitting way more power. He's getting the job done, and you know there was a late attempt on a takedown for an armbar and a guillotine from Helliger, but they weren't even close enough to score. And for next opponents, I have Kakramanov for Alatang because I kind of have questions about both of those guys. Where like the guys they've beaten have just not been physically able to answer any questions from them. So pair them together and see what happens. And Helliger versus Ronnie Lawrence because Ronnie Lawrence is kind of the same in the sense that like I like what he's put together. I think it's a smartly put together game, but there's not enough physical horsepower behind it to really make it work. And we might as well see who is more like that than the other one, I guess. Brings us to Elise Reed versus Melissa Martinez, Super Melly, who has a legion of thirsty fans. We'll just put it that way. The thirst is real. I had Reed winning all three of these fight rounds. Martinez had some good moments at range with striking, but like Reed was able to generally put the punctuation mark on every exchange they had, the harder shots. When they got into the clinch, Reed looked like the smaller, or Reed looked like the stronger fighter, which is historically been a weakness of hers. So credit to the strength and conditioning team that's working with her. They're doing a great job. And that pretty much was the repetitive process of the fight. Reed's lead leg did get pretty banged up by the third round, and Martinez started to have some success, but then she tried to wrestle with Reed. Reed put her down, mounted her for a bit, didn't do a ton of damage, but pretty much limited anything Martinez was going to do. And I gave her all 3 rounds, and I'll look up the cards while Byron gives his thoughts.
It was horrible. It was the worst thing in the world. It was the second worst thing in the world. The worst thing in the world we're going to talk about next.
Martinez won the second round on all 3 judges' scorecards. Maybe I need to go rewatch it. Maybe I'd agree. Let's have a look at UFC stats real quick.
Well, I believe one of them threw at least one punch, and the other one threw at least one punch as well.
Mind you, I will say this UFC stats. I was looking at the Leach versus Rodriguez's stats, and they seemed really, really, really off. So, second round, they credited Martinez with 19 significant strikes landed to 13 for Reed. So I guess that would be the logic. I guess she out volumed her in the second round. But they also have her winning the volume battle in the first round, and I don't think that was the case. So there you go.
Word.
And we move on to Darian Weeks versus wait. Opponents. Elise Reed I've got against the winner of Jinyu Fry and Polyana Viana, because I still have significant questions about her in the clinch, because I feel like this fight was just more of an exposure of Melissa Martinez and the derailing of the hype train, as someone put in our Discord with the big like Thomas the Tank Engine train derailing gif. And for Martinez, put her in there with Diana Belbita. Belbita is someone who also historically has been bullyable in the clinch.
Did you get
And see what happens.
Did you apply the heat to the Belbita and it just melt?
I like the thing with Martinez is I just think that she's too small. Like I think she's an atom weight size competitor fighting at straw weight, because the UFC doesn't have an atom weight division, and that's about it. Darian Weeks versus Johan Lainus. Byron, it sounds like you have thoughts on this fight. If it's the worst thing you've ever seen,
It's so bad I barely remember it. I just remember that Lainus definitely didn't win the fight, and they gave it to him anyway.
I rewatched the fight. I'm a little more okay with the decision, having rewatched it and
Fair enough.
put a really close look on it. I still scored it for Weeks. I gave the second and the third round of Weeks. But that third round becomes a lot closer on closer rewatch inspection. Mostly because Weeks just doesn't do much. Weeks is trying to do things and failing, and Linus is just not doing things. And so when he cracks out a flying knee at the end of the fight and a guillotine attempt, you're like, oh, that was the most significant thing to happen all around.
Mm-hmm.
Linus clearly knows he has cardio issues, and his solution to that is to fight a very, very slow-paced fight. And the problem with that is that I don't think it works, because unless you knock people out, it shouldn't win you decisions. And for me, the only problem is Weeks is really physically talented, but he's kind of like Pickett in a sense that I just don't think he's very comfortable in there. Now he doesn't look as nervous and like he's shitting himself in his own pants like Pickett does, but he doesn't really apply the physicality that he really should have. And as a result, Linus kind of squeaked this one out, but again, shouldn't have. And I say that as someone who picked Linus to win the fight. I'm saying the guy I picked here did not win the fight. That's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying,
kind of intrigued.
Perhaps he should stick to fishing in Quebec.
Kind of intrigued. I'm assuming that 1 and 3 were the rounds that the judges gave to Johan. I would imagine. Yeah, Tony Weeks gave the first and the third. Michael Bell gave the first and the third. Ron McCarthy had a scorecard that agreed with mine, where he gave the second and third to Darian Weeks. So, or Darren Weeks. So I guess unlike the Leach Rodriguez scorecards, at least I follow all of these scorecards. Like I get the internal logic being displayed, uh, even if I do disagree with judges Michael Bell and Tony Weeks. Not for the first time. Also, Tony Weeks, how can you rob Darren Weeks like that? How can you do that to how can you do that to your boy? um, next opponents, I kind of like the idea of Lanus just getting fed to Ange Losa, and I've lost Byron. And for Darian Weeks, I got Ramiz Brahima because I don't really know what to do with him as a fighter. So that was the fight card. What do we got coming up here? I know some people are really happy with the next fight card, and I don't really understand it. It's the Sandhagen versus Yadong Song fight card, and it's got some good fights on there. Looking forward to Chidi and Jaquani versus Gregory Rodriguez. The main event is really, really good as well. Andre Feely versus Bill Algeo. I am always going to be disappointed when it's not Bill Algeo versus Billy Quarantillo, but there is that. Trey Ogden versus Daniel Zellhuber is not too bad. Nicholas Mata versus Cameron Van Camp. David Jackson for Pat Sabatini. But like also on the main card, you've got Alan Amidovsky. Why is he still in contract against Joe Pfeiffer or Joe Pfeiffer? And Tanner Bozer versus Rodrigo Nascimento. I like Tanner Bozer, but why is Dashimoto back on contract? I don't know. That's the next card that's coming up. And yeah, that's all from me. Byron is back. Would you like to say bye to the people, Byron?
Get out and don't come back. Until next time.
You should come back.
Probably should.
Linktree and all the links are in the description below, wherever you are listening or watching to this podcast via YouTube, Acast, Anchor, and Spotify. We will talk to you. I will talk to you next week, and if there's a lot of positive feedback on this format, I will keep having guests back and
Hi.
letting them have their thoughts.
Remember, kids, there's a nut shot, you have to do a shot.